and welcome back to another new episode of Speak of the Devils. I'm Sam St. Jean here with Dom Fusco and Sam Glavin. We got another fun episode here. We're doing this before the NBA draft. It's tonight, so we're going to kind of center a lot of our conversations around that in the first topic. In our first section, we're going to talk a lot about free agency and what we want to see our teams that we support do. The third one, we're going to talk about biggest draft busts, which should be a fun conversation. And of course, with our middle segment in the interview, we're going to have Coach Nichter on for a good conversation from the cross-country coach at Dickinson College. And I guess just to get us going and kind of jump right into this, Sam, I kind of wanted to ask you first, what are you kind of looking for tonight? Do you expect Philly to try and do anything despite what had just happened? You might want to talk about that.
If you're talking about like trading up to get a better pick, I sure hope they don't. I don't think it's worth it. This draft, I know very little about this draft. All I know is that LaMelo Ball is probably going to be in the top 3, and then the Anthony Edwards, I think the guy from Georgia is all. So no, I don't want them to trade up or anything. I want them to save their picks and their players to trade to maybe get Harden. I think that would be great. We just need to revitalize, really. And I've liked everything that they've done so far since the hiring of Daryl Morey, and having the reduced role of Elton Brand. I think that's great. So I'll watch the draft tonight, but I don't know really what I'm looking for. I want the Sixers to draft somebody that'll help them, probably a shooter of some sort, but I have no idea who they're even projected to pick right now.
Yeah. Do we know if is everything virtual? Is the entire draft going to be virtual like the NFL was?
I believe so.
Yeah. I saw a picture today of LaMelo Ball at home in his suit. So I'm assuming he doesn't live right next door to where they're doing the draft. So I'm assuming that's how they're going to do it, just like the NFL. But I feel like this year's draft is far more interesting. Maybe you don't know all the prospects quite as well due to a limited NCAA season last year. But what I will say is there isn't a clear number one. Like, no one knows who the first pick is quite yet, which is a big change from Zion last year. And all 3 of the top picks aren't going to be coming from Duke this year, which is also a good change, I think, that'll make things a little bit more interesting. I know, just speaking, I would kind of want to hear what you have to say, Dom, just about, what the 76ers should be expecting to do maybe coming into this offseason. Not even necessarily concerning just the draft, but just what you'd like to see. And I mean, I'll just bring up quickly that they, in this moment, like, I don't know, hour before this, were able to cut the space that Al Horford took up in the cap room, which does open the potential door to squeeze more. And they might even just cut the asset they gained to Danny Green.
Yeah, I mean, before I even mention anything along the lines of the Sixers, I just want to kind of go back to the NFL draft. And what brought me the most joy from that painful few hours was watching Roger Goodell sit in his basement and eat M&Ms all night. I thought that was extremely entertaining. So I'm really looking for Adam Silver to make his mark. People are always going to remember Roger Goodell sitting in his football watching chair, his Sunday football watching chair, eating M&Ms, which was amazing. So I'm really looking for Adam Silver. He's a little bit more of a respected guy. So I don't know if he's gonna be doing anything of that stature, but we'll see what the commish has got going on tonight. In terms of the 76ers, I'm so glad Al Horford is out of town. I'm not going to touch on it too long. His contract was horrible. He stunk. He didn't fit with Joel and Ben. I would have taken a couple hot dogs for him. Honestly, I'm just glad that they got him out of town, and they acquired Danny Green. But like as Sammy and I were talking before the show, they may just cut him and try to use it in some way to maybe possibly get Harden here. So it'll be interesting. But what I'm really looking for is what Adam Silver is going to do while on camera tonight.
Absolutely, I can't necessarily blame you for that. But I don't know what. I hope he's got at least something up his sleeve, even though it's a shorter draft than the NFL draft. There is a lot of interesting teams to kind of look at, especially at the top of the list with your draft picks. You got the Timberwolves, I believe, with the number 1, Warriors, and then Hornets. And then they seem, from what I've heard, they seem pretty locked in at those positions. They're going to keep those picks. They're going to draft who they're going to draft. And outside of that, they're open to trades. And I know my own Celtics are hopefully not going to use all 3 of their first round draft picks. The Celtics currently have 14 people already on their roster. So drafting 3 rookies would probably be the most useless thing you could possibly do. And I trust Danny Ainge, and I hope he doesn't do that. They have been linked in a lot of drama. There was a lot of things trending on Twitter concerning the Celtics about trying to quote unquote frantically get rid of players, including Gordon Hayward and Marcus Smart. And they're apparently throwing absolutely everything they own except Tatum at the Rockets to try and acquire James Harden. And then one thing that they actually got linked in today was the Celtics are trying to do something either with the Cavs or the Hawks for their pick, or instead of their pick with the Cavs for Andre Drummond, since what they really need is a big man.
That's interesting. I mean, I was not aware that they had 3 first-round draft picks. That's interesting, Sammy. I haven't heard any links from Harden to the Celtics. I've only heard of the Nets and the Sixers so far. Hopefully he does not go to the Celtics. I would not enjoy that in the slightest. I want Harden in Philly for sure. But I can't imagine him going to the Brooklyn Nets. There's not enough ball to go around that team if he ends up going there.
Yeah, that's my thing with the Nets too, is although they could make it work because of all their assets and the cap space they technically would have, no team wants to set them up to have Harden, Kyrie, and Kevin Durant. That sounds like a horrible idea for just everybody involved. But the other thing is too, like, I just don't see him fitting well with them. I saw actually a really funny video. Is like, it's just someone playing 2K with them 3, and it was just them dribbling for 24 seconds, doing every single crossover you could imagine, and then chucking up a fadeaway 3. And that's probably what you can expect from the Nets if that does happen. I wouldn't be surprised to see the 76ers grab them, especially with cap space they just make. The Celtics, I don't see him fitting very well unless you get rid of Hayward, Smart, and all 3 of your picks. I think that's the only way you could make it work, because Kemba at the point guard, Harden, Tatum, and Brown would be pretty good starting 4. With you, obviously, you got to fill in that center spot. But I don't really know necessarily what to expect the Celtics to do, because there's so much they can do. They actually recently got Hayward to push the extension back, the deadline for his extension on his contract, which usually, that means they're both in good faith to each other, at least trying to do what's in the best interest of both parties. At least there's no ill will between all the media buzz.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not really sure what else to really watch for. There's so much that can happen with this NBA season being forced to start so quickly too. Like, you really don't, like, it's supposed to start at the end of December, which is a pretty quick turnaround.
Big time.
Sorry, Dom. I'm not hearing you, Dom.
Yeah, I can't hear you, buddy.
Sorry about that. Yeah. All right, I'm good. Back now? Yeah.
Yeah,
right,
you're good.
I think that the Harden to Philly trade would make the most sense in terms of a fit if the Sixers were going to give up Ben Simmons and send him to Houston. But I think the pick and roll would work really well with Harden and Embiid. However, I don't see Westbrook and Simmons playing well together. I don't think, just because they both like to have the ball in their hand. They're both similar players. They can't really shoot very well. They just hustle guys. So I don't know. I can't really see Westbrook and Simmons meshing very well in Houston. But I can see Harden and Embiid along with some other pieces, Josh Richardson and Matisse Thybulle in Philly. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
Westbrook wants out of Houston. So I think they're also trying to get rid of him in hopes that they can probably gain something from maybe the Sixers if they really want Ben Simmons. Dom, I was going to ask you, who would you rather give up, Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons in this kind of trade?
Probably Simmons.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I at all costs, I do not want to give up Embiid. I think he's one of the top 5 players in the league right now. He's fantastic. He can shoot it. He's great on defense. Like, he's just awesome. I'm off. I've been off the Ben Simmons train for a while now. I don't like having a point guard that literally can't shoot the basketball. He was first team all defense this year. He was third team all NBA, which is great. Good for him. But I didn't really see that on the court this past year or even the year before. So I'm ready to move on from Ben Simmons, and I'm ready to see what kind of possibilities maybe trading him could open up.
Also, those two young building blocks in Simmons and Embiid have had a little bit of injury issues, and having two players that are your building blocks both having injury issues is a little bit of a tough kind of thing to go with. Although people may not like Harden's play style, he is pretty durable for the most part for what he's been in the league. And I think that's one thing the 76ers are probably looking into is, you want to have your star players in the game as much as possible in as many games as possible. And obviously with injuries, that kind of gets affected, and maybe a pandemic doesn't help quite as well either. But, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. There's so much that could happen, especially at the top of the draft. I expect 1 through 3 to stay in the same order, but after that, anything could happen. And then you kind of look towards, once everyone has their draft picks, I feel like everyone's going to have a better idea of where everyone wants to go with their free agency signings, where everyone wants to go with potential trades. And then for the Celtics, after Hayward either signs or declines his, year opt-in, his player option. So there's a lot of stuff that could happen. And I literally have my phone open in front of me just in case anything does happen. Yeah. But the Celtics need a center, and the 76ers need shooters. So I think that's kind of, in terms of our own two teams rooting interests, even though they may be rivals, that's kind of what you're looking for, is you're looking for the 76ers to try and find a shooter, and for the Celtics to try and find a big man and or get rid of Hayward in some way, shape or form that makes him happy and, get some type of value out of him instead of just letting him cut loose and then sign with maybe the Pacers, who have interest in him. Actually, the Hawks also have interest in him as well. Yeah.
And while I want the Sixers to do everything they can to pursue whoever they want, because I trust Daryl Morey in that role. Now he said he's working on something to get a big signing here. It was, quote, big signing here without trading Embiid and Simmons. Hopefully he wasn't talking about Danny Green, because that would be a little weird. But the two untouchable players for me from our Sixers roster are Joel Embiid and Matisse Thybulle. I love Matisse Thybulle. I think he got robbed this year of being on any kind of rookie team. He's fantastic on defense. I'm pretty sure he led the league in steals for most of the bubble. He's got a decent shot. I mean, he's a hustle player. I love everything about him. So, and he's a young guy. And we need young talent, and we've struggled drafting guys in the past. So I'm glad that we have Matisse Thybulle. So I really don't want to get rid of Matisse Thybulle like we got rid of Shamet over to the Clippers. I love Landry Shamet. In 2K, I used to play Landry Shamet over Ben Simmons when I played with the Sixers, and so I was pissed when they traded him. But yeah, the two untouchables for me right now are Matisse Thybulle and Joel Embiid.
Yeah. All right. And I mean, just before we wrap this up, I want to hear kind of one bold prediction that you expect to happen in the next week.
For me, it will be James Harden coming to the Sixers for it's Ben Simmons, Josh Richardson, and Tobias Harris, and a first.
How about you, Dom?
I could just see the Knicks doing something and moving up into the top 5, maybe the top 3. So I don't really necessarily know something crazy that would happen, but if I was to guess, I think the Knicks will do something stupid and move into the top 5 and probably take someone who's going to be mediocre at best. No. So
yeah, I want to see the Knicks do well. I feel so bad for New York Knicks fans. I really do.
Yeah, I do too.
See, but... I don't like the Knicks.
I really don't.
I don't like the Knicks at all. But it's one of those teams that just like the Cubs used to be, where I just feel bad for them at this point, and I want something, just like maybe not an NBA title or anything, but just like one good thing to go their way.
It's like the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like you don't really have anything against them, but like you feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Well, they got a Dickinson alum running the show over there now.
Well, maybe that's good luck then. Maybe we'll go and make a move. I'll say just my quick prediction: the Celtics are going to go get a center. It's either going to be from the Pacers or the Cavaliers, and that could be a draft pick if it's the Cavaliers. And but we're going to roll into our interview with Coach Don Nichter, who does long distance running for track and field, and for just in general cross country.
Healthy, not boring. That's the motto of the Grazery. But it is also their promise to you. Visit Grazery today and indulge on fresh Mediterranean-inspired salads, sandwiches, and soups, among other great options on a menu that serves both breakfast and lunch. Eat in or take out. No reservation needed here. So hurry on down to 156 West High Street, just yards from campus, and enjoy a fresh, healthy meal today.
All right. Thank you, Dom. We are here with cross country and long distance coach Don Nichter, and it's a pleasure to have you. How you doing, Coach?
Hey, how you doing, guys? Nice to be here.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I mean, we've had some great conversations with the coaches. We kind of want to just, pick all the coaches' brains and see what you guys have to say, all the differences between your own mindsets and all that kind of stuff. So I'll kind of get it going here. And I kind of want to just ask first about something that Justin told us. So we hear you're a large silent disco fan. And that is something I knew I couldn't forget to ask about. So I kind of wanted to ask about that.
Hey, when you live through the 70s, you can't ever get that out of your system. So I can disco dance with the best of them.
Oh, that's awesome. And he mentioned the largest silent disco that you've attended that.
No, it's not it's actually the world's largest disco. It's held in Niagara Falls Convention Center.
Okay.
Buffalo Niagara Falls Convention Center, over 10,000 people. It's a hoot. I mean, it's a unbelievable experience. It's held every year over Thanksgiving. Of course, this year I'm going to miss out on I think it would probably be about my 26th straight disco party. But this year, obviously they can't do it, unfortunately. But I'll be back next year.
Oh, absolutely.
It'll be bigger and better than ever. But the disco clothes are the leisure suit and the platform shoes and everything else that goes with it. It's all waiting for me for another year.
Nice.
That's great. That's great, Coach. Well, let's dive into your sport. What is it? So my biggest thing when I'm thinking about like how to coach runners is what happened. What do you do with a player who seems to be like plateauing? Like they keep getting this certain time. They can't break above their break a record or something like that. What's your mindset when coaching somebody like that?
Well, the way running works, and it's a developmental process, right? So there's an awful lot of trust that an athlete has to have. And it's not going to be a direct cause and effect. It's not like, okay, do this workout on Tuesday, and by Saturday, you're going to reap the benefits from that. I mean, this is a long-term developmental thing. Those breakthroughs in performance come sometimes at times, when it's not predictable. It just kind of happens. Everything kind of comes together, the mental, the physical, the mechanical aspects of what we're trying to do with training. So all those things sort of put in place, maybe the right competition, the right weather conditions. And all of a sudden, you find that sweet spot and find that runner's high, and all of a sudden, good things are happening. So, I mean, that can happen in practice, where you get those kind of experiences, but obviously more importantly, you're trying to break through some of those barriers that you're referring to that may be physiological. And so we got to work on developing endurance or developing speed or developing efficiency, but they also might be mental, so a big part of running, and maybe going back to your question, is trying to work on what's happening between each year and how that's translating into performances and the willingness to kind of overcome what may be perceived as a ceiling to performance, but ultimately can be a breakthrough in something bigger and better. So I think we're kind of always working on the mental and sorry about that, Dom, but the mental and the physical, they go hand in hand. So we're trying to develop the mind and the body at the same time, develop confidence, develop strategy, develop their physiology, and then try to put all that together into the mix and make something special happen.
Well, I'll actually go off of what you just said there. Then, how much do you read or study sports psychology, and how do you think that makes you a better coach?
I think it's huge. I mean, I think coaches in my field will sometimes joke that it's 95% mental. It's just the science of coaching is the 5% that we try to apply, the exercise physiology, the strength training and the things that go into that. And then it's the other sort of the art of coaching, I suppose. If there's a science of coaching, that's the understanding physiology. and biomechanics, but the art of coaching is trying to hit the right buttons at the right time with athletes to kind of work with their personality, what motivates them, what helps them grow and develop mentally and emotionally to perform. So you're trying, and it's different for some athletes need to be pushed and some athletes need to be comforted. But either way, you got to try to get to a place where they can compete at a higher level. So, I think the psychology of running and the training aspect of doing that as a coach is really an important part of what we do.
No, absolutely. And so I will say I kind of have a rough idea. I ran cross country for 1 year, so I have a rough idea, but I kind of wanted to ask in general, how do you go about designing your weekly, schedule? I know every runner is going to be a little different, especially while they're at home for the pandemic, but I kind of want to know, like, what's your process for designing that weekly program? Because I know you can't do the same run every day.
Yeah, it's hard, easy. There's hard, easy principles of running. So you might have 2 workouts a week. You might have a long run mixed in. So, this is where the science comes into play. So you've got an endurance run one day and then maybe a recovery day. And then maybe you're coming back with what we call a VO2 max workout, which would be at more of a race pace intensity. And then maybe another recovery day. And then somewhere in there, you might do what's called a tempo run or a threshold pace run, which is a little bit more of kind of a red line run where you're going a little longer, a little bit less intense than you would if you were doing race pace intervals. So a little bit slower, but a little bit longer. And you're working kind of more on what's called the anaerobic threshold and sort of trying to find that sweet spot and not go too much into the red line, keep the workout under control, but at the same time, gain something productive in terms of adaptation in the body. So, there's a plan and a method to the madness. And obviously feeling the athlete out along the way with what works, what isn't, when they're tired, when they're thriving, and trying to balance those different stages of work and recovery. You get fit as a runner on the rest days. So you have to be always reminding athletes that the workout is not the day they get better. It's the day after that. The workout is a stimulus physiologically. The recovery is really an important part, right? So we're talking about athletes that what they do the other 22 hours a day when they're not at practice is oftentimes more important than what's happening for the 2 hours that they're practice. They've got to eat right. They've got to sleep. They've got to maintain, a moderate stress level. Those kinds of things are really important in terms of how their body responds to the workout.
Coach, we got some exciting news a couple weeks back about the NCAA championships coming for cross country coming to Dickinson in 2023. Can you tell us your thought process behind when that news came out, and what do you need to do to prepare for it?
Yeah, that's I'll tell you what, this goes back. I came to Dickinson in 83. So wow. 1998, we put a bid in to host the national meet. I was on the NCAA committee at the time. We got the bid and we held a meet over at Carlisle High School, which used to be our home course. And over the last 25 years, well, now 23 years, but it will be 25 when we host in 2 years. The NCAA has not had the meet back in the east part of the country. We've always been somewhere west of here. Midwest is very popular, even out on the West Coast, but we've never had the NCAA Division III cross country meet back east of the Mississippi in 23 years now. So wow. This will be a homecoming. This will be the 25th year anniversary. So it's kind of gone full circle between Carlisle in 98 and Carlisle in 2023. The only difference will be at a Big Spring High School over in Newville, which is our new home course. But yeah, we're real excited. This is kind of something I've always wanted to do one more time in my career, and going to get an opportunity to do that. And, and it's going to bring a lot of attention to Dickinson, obviously the Carlisle community. We're going to be working with the tourism group in locally here, as well as Big Spring High School. And it's going to be a real community effort, but exciting opportunity. Now we just got to make sure we can get a team there on the starting line and make sure that we're competing. So we weren't fortunate in 98. We weren't there. So this time it's going to be a little different. We're going to have a men's and women's team on the starting line.
Awesome.
technically, if it was going by individual runners and wins, you would be the most successful coach in Dickinson history. Is that correct?
Somebody has a count, Charlie McGuire. We've kept a loose count, but I think we're up over about 6,000 wins. So I joke with the other coaches in the department, when they get their 100th win, it's a big thing, and we all celebrate that. And then I remind them that I think I'm somewhere over 6,000. But we started a system where, if you go to an invitational, just to explain that our sport's different, right? We're not competing in dual meets and tri meets very often, or one-on-one like other sports, team sports. We're at big invitationals, and if there are 30 teams there and we finish third in the meet, we beaten 28 teams. So we're 28-2 at a 30 team invitational kind of thing. So the wins add up pretty quick. But I've been fortunate to coach a lot of really, really good athletes that have created that record. Frankly, it's the athletes in the program that have gone to those invitationals and run the races and got the wins that make that kind of a fun statistic to keep track of.
For sure. And so I kind of want to ask something for your general person who doesn't know much about cross country. And I want to ask, how does the scoring in cross country work? Because I know many people, especially those who haven't run, don't have any idea how it works.
Wow. Well, Sam, you actually sound like a guy, between your first question and this one, that you have a little eligibility left. You might be coming out for the team here. I think you referred to your past days as a cross country runner. I'm thinking that we might want to put you in red and white and see how it goes.
Oh, that might be rough. That was over 4 years ago now. It was my sophomore year of high school, but I'm someone who never. A lot of people say that cross country and like long distance running, your sport is their pain. But I never felt that way necessarily. But I don't know if I have it in me anymore.
Okay. All right, so get back to your question is a good one, because I think some people are still trying to figure out how this works, but it's really pretty simple once you figure it out. Like, you got to get to the finish line, right? So you're all starting together, but the scoring is based on place, and the low score wins. So if we're running a dual meet and we're against Gettysburg or F&M, and you have 5 people that score, and you put 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in, you've got the lowest score that you can possibly get, which is 15, if you add those 5 places together. So a perfect score in cross country is 15 to 50, because the other team would take all of the other places that you don't have. So your top 5 score, and then your 6th and your 7th runners. Typically in a championship race, you're allowed to have 7 people. So 5 people score, and 2 are what is called a displacer. So a displacer makes the other team score bigger. So if we were in that dual meet and we went 1 through 5 with my top 5, and my other 2 men or women finished 6th and 7th in the race, that'd be a perfect sweep, because that would make the other team score 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And if you add up 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, you get 50. And we'd have 15, because we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 and 7 would display. So that would be a whitewash shutout, hide your pain when you go home kind of defeat that we'd love to put on people when we get a chance. It doesn't happen that often, but that's a perfect score in cross country. So, but everybody's timed. That's the individual component, but the team part is how you compare place wise, regardless of time. Nobody cares about time when it comes to team scoring. The times come into play, obviously, for individuals.
Coach, how have your athletes and your plans changed for the pandemic? I mean, I know it might be a little easier as a runner to just go outside and run. Like if they're at home, that's something that a lot of people can do. Not everybody has, like a baseball cage in their backyard or something like that. So what has changed for your athletes?
Well, I tell you what, we actually tried to minimize the change as much as possible this fall. So we had a regular training program. We met once a week or more often. They had mileage goals each week that were individualized. So it's very individual in terms of what they're asked to do. The workout days were typically Tuesday and Friday. Obviously, they were doing this all on their own. But we would explain the workout, set it up, and then they had paces to run in the workout. So it was very much, okay, this is what you're supposed to run your mile repeat in. This is what you're supposed to run your 400 at rep pace. This is what you're going to run your 800 at I pace. So there's different paces, what we call T pace, I pace, R pace, and F pace. So, and so we have different paces that represent tempo pace or threshold pace, and then I pace is interval pace, R pace is rep pace, and then F pace is just run fast. So they'd have paces for those workouts, and they'd have a regular training plan. And the idea is that your body has to have some challenges and deal with, some physiological adversity, if you will. You have to kind of get to that place in workouts to not just run every day, at a comfortable place, but to be able to, like going back to what we said earlier, have some hard days and then some other days that are more comfortable and recovery days. And we know physiologically that that's what the body needs to respond and develop. So I've tried to ask the athletes to do that. It's been challenging. It's tough to do that by yourself. It's some kids were able to find a track, some not. Some were doing this out on the roads or finding a trail or making the best effort they could to find a place to do the workout, because it wasn't always going to be convenient to go to your local track if they couldn't get on the high school track. But overall, I think our team did pretty well. And now we're just sort of, obviously, we're in a little bit of a transition between now and what would normally be our indoor and outdoor track season. So we're just kind of waiting to hear what would happen. Normally, this coming weekend would have been the national championship. So we would have been hosting regionals last Saturday. We'd probably be right now preparing, to leave Thursday for nationals. So it's kind of it's sort of hard to really deal with the difference between where we are now and where we would have liked to have been. But, nonetheless, hopefully next year is going to be a better year for us.
Definitely. So when you're coaching cross country and you send them on a decently far run, what do you do when you're waiting for them? Do you drive around and follow them and with a bullhorn and yell at them out of your car, or how does that work?
I'm on my bike every day. Occasionally a run with them, but when I first came to Dickinson, just a little story, you might want to edit this out, but the coach that, I won't mention his name, but when I first came here and I was his apprentice as an assistant, the first run at Dickinson was we went out in a van and he dropped the guys off out at Opossum Lake, about 7 or 8 miles from campus. And I was literally like, this is 83 and I'm new on campus and this is my first experience with Dickinson athletics. And we drive about halfway back and he parks the van along the side of the road and pulls out a cigar and sits in the van and smokes a cigar as he waits for the guys to come by like 30 minutes later. So that was my first experience as a coach. But I've tried to stay a little more active. I don't smoke cigars at practice. I do still really appreciate the part of the sport that has drew me to it to begin with, which was, the purity of it and the challenge of it and the solitude and all the things that some of us distance runners appreciate that other people can't understand. So I still try to do that myself, but I do like to be out there on the bike. I take water out, carry water bottles on my bike, carry an extra backpack with water on hot days, that kind of thing. So try to stay active, stay away from the bullhorn, maybe yell some words of encouragement every now and then. But that's pretty much what a cross country coach does on a typical cross country practice day.
I like it.
All right. So this is the last one for me. And I'll say when I ran, the hardest part for me was figuring out how much to leave in the tank for that last stretch, which was also the most fun part, was that last stretch when you get to, I feel like I've played a lot of different sports in my time, and no sport gives you the thrill that the last stretch of a cross country run really gives you. And I can admit that as someone who, ran it for one semester, and I kind of wish I could get that feeling from another sport again. But when it comes to, that difficulty of finding how much is in the tank, and I know it's different for every runner, how do you gauge that per runner? And I know some of it's a little individualized and you got to kind of judge it on your own as the runner, but what kind of process do you, or what role in that process do you play?
Well, one of the things that we do is called negative splitting. So you try to get runners, especially in longer races. Women are racing 6,000 meters and men 8,000 in college, which is 5 miles, and women a little bit less than 4. So you're really trying to get everyone to appreciate how you have to pace yourself at the beginning of the race so that you do have some closing speed at the end. So you can break the race into 3 components, which, just to give you a context for this, if the first part of the race is kind of mental in terms of just staying in the race, but keeping a little bit of control, effort control, not going out too hard, too fast. The second part of the race is kind of where you get into the physiology a little bit, where you got to grind it out. You're going to deal with a little bit of, physical discomfort, but you're going to kind of challenge yourself through the middle of the race. And then the last third of the race, to me, is the heart, so you go from mind to body, and then, what's inside, what's in your heart, what's in your passion pill, how bad do you want it? How committed are you to not only your own race, but to your teammates by getting the best score you can get, right? By virtue of where you finish. I think, that's, you're sort of appealing to that sense of how to pace yourself so that you do have something left in the tank, so to speak, at the end, and you can close things down. We used to do this thing called open the bottle at the end, which was just basically you have all this pent up emotion and energy and synergy as a team at the end of the race. And then you kind of open up that last 200-300 meters, and kind of, you can also use like a mental imagery thing where I'm literally like opening this bottle of energy that's still there, even though I thought I was done and I didn't have anything left, but you still do, because you're kind of carrying this bottle of extra energy with you for the last 200 meters or 400 meters of the race.
That's great. Coach, I'm all out of questions. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Great. Dom, you good too?
I'm good. You answered all my questions. Thank you, Coach.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. You guys are wonderful. You're doing good work. It's good stuff that you've been able to do with some of the coaches and athletes. And, I think we really appreciate it. It's great for our student athletes and, to get some recognition and obviously for overall athletic program to get representation and support from students and athletes like yourself. So thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you again for coming on.
Okay. You're welcome. See you guys.
See it.
Complex is something no coach or athlete wants to deal with, which is why every team aims to keep schemes and execution simple so success is easy to achieve. That's the game plan used by Grazery right here in Carlisle. Simple ingredients that are fresh, healthy, and above all, delicious. Healthy, not boring food that is not just good, but good for you, made only from the healthiest and simple ingredients. So come in today and enjoy a great meal made simple at Grazery, located at 156 West High Street in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Awesome. So that was an awesome interview with Coach Nichter. I'm glad we got to see a little bit of his personality and get a little bit of an explanation on what cross country is for those who don't know. But we're going to go back to the NBA here with this segment and go through, leading up to the draft, our top 5 biggest busts in the NBA. We're not going to be doing an honorable mention this week, but we do have, our biggest NBA busts or draft picks that really ended up just flopping and being a waste. And I know 76ers fans know all about flopping draft picks.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I'll go ahead and I'll start us off. At my number 5, I'm going to go with Anthony Bennett, who was taken in the 2013 NBA draft over Victor Oladipo for the first overall pick. That was a shock. I don't think he was on anybody's radar, like in the slightest. And I know that was like the big, it's Victor Oladipo, Cody Zeller, all those guys. It was actually my first 2K. So whenever I played that, I was always like, I can't believe they freaking took Anthony Bennett over Oladipo. So that's my number 5.
I guess I'll go next. My number 5 is Greg Oden, who, I don't know, not much. I'm not going to give too much of an explanation on these, just because I don't know like a whole ton of background on these guys. I just know Greg Oden was an absolute bust, and it was just kind of a hilarious situation. So I'm going to go with him.
He was taking over KD.
He was taking over KD. Yeah, he was taking over a lot of good players.
Yeah.
All right. So my number 5 is also Anthony Bennett, which is kind of why I made that expression, because I really hope we don't have the exact same list again. But and my reason for Anthony Bennett isn't because of Victor Oladipo. It's because of who got picked 14 picks afterwards, which is, granted, it's hindsight, but it's Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Giannis,
who was taken 15th in that draft.
Mm-hmm.
But they took Bennett with the first overall pick, and he was out of the league after 4 seasons, and he was barely in the NBA. He really just was kind of a G League guy for those 4 years, and really just didn't work out too well.
That was bad. My number 4 is it hurts me to put this one on the list because I'm a big Duke guy, but I'm putting Christian Laettner on the list because he was phenomenal in college, and I guess he had all this expectations going into the NBA draft that he was going to be like the next big thing in the NBA, and then he just wasn't. He was just kind of your average run of the mill NBA guy, and he didn't really amount to much.
At least he had a good 30 for 30.
He did have a fantastic 30 for 30. That's right.
All right,
for my number 4, I'm going to go with Jay Williams, who, as you guys remembered, I'm not the biggest Jay Williams fan, but and he also stunk. So he was taken number 3 overall by the Chicago Bulls. And sorry, Jay, you're on my list.
2 weeks in a row, he makes Dom's list from a negative list standpoint as well.
All right, so my number 4 is Lonzo Ball, and I put Lonzo on this ball, not Lonzo Ball on this list, not because he's like a useless player in the NBA. He's not a decent role player, borderline starter, but because of the players he was drafted in between, Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, both far out. Like that's kind of what I was looking at when I was making this list, is how much better were the players drafted around you. And Jason Tatum for the Celtics drafted at 3. And Donovan Mitchell, it was kind of just a waste in that sense with both of those players. I think before the draft, for me, both of those players were better.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I'm gonna go for my number 3. I'm gonna go Sean Bradley. It wouldn't be a Sam Glavine list if there wasn't a Sixers player on there. And there's definitely one more to come. I'm sure everybody else knows who it is. But yeah, Sean Bradley was a terrible pick. He was terrible just for the Sixers. I wasn't around for when he was playing, but I've heard from all the radio shows I listened to that he was just absolutely terrible to be taken at that pick. So.
Yeah, my number 3 is going to be a Central PA native, Sam Bowie, who was another brutal pick that became a bust by the Portland Trailblazers, and he's from Lebanon, Pennsylvania. So obviously you root for the local guy, but man, did he stink. Man, did he stink. Even though obviously we never got to see him play, but hearing the stories and watching some of the tapes on him, he was bad.
No, that's fair. So my next one is Greg Oden, who Dom already mentioned. Just to give a little background, he, as Dom kind of alluded to, was a Trailblazers pick, and he, ever since he was like even considering for the draft, like he looked like he was a 50-year-old man already. And he just did not look like he was built for the long haul. I don't know why anyone would waste a number 1 overall pick on that. But in that 2007 draft, there was, as Sam mentioned, Kevin Durant. But there was also a couple other good picks, and one who 76ers fans are happy to be rid of, and Al Horford. But he was pretty solid before last year for the 76ers, Joakim Noah and Marc Gasol. So there was definitely better options than Greg Oden in his 6-year injury-riddled season.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad to be rid of Al Horford. He was good for everybody except for the Sixers. So I'm going to go for my number 2 is going to be Sam Bowie from the Portland Trail Blazers. mainly because Michael Jordan was taken after him and Charles Barkley and all that fantastic draft. I can't believe Sam Bowie is the number 1 overall pick, and then he just stunk. So
wasn't Stockton taken in that draft too?
Say it again.
Wasn't John Stockton taken in that draft?
Yes.
Too?
Yes. Can't believe it.
My number 2 is, as mentioned before, Anthony Bennett, probably the most recent one out of all these busts. And boy, was that not a strong draft class in general, but like you said, Sam picked over Oladipo, and he just, even when he was picked, it wasn't like, it was like, yeah, Anthony Bennett, like he's legit, like he should be the number 1 pick. It was like, okay, Anthony Bennett, and he just did not fare well at all. So that's why he's my number 2.
So my number 2, and I'm assuming this might be Sam's number 1, is Markelle Fultz. And, I won't go into it too deep just because I bet Sam can elaborate on it more. But, it was that same draft I hinted to. He was the number 1 pick, and he just didn't, amount to what he was supposed to be. He didn't, reach any expectations, and he's not even a part of the team he was drafted by anymore. And neither was Lonzo Ball, which is again why he's on this list. He now plays for, I bet most people listening won't know, but he plays for the Orlando Magic and is I feel like he's borderline 6th man, maybe 7th man on that team. And I feel like I don't see his ceiling getting much better. Because
all I know is that he had a relatively decent year this year for some reason.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but I will say 76ers love drafting point guards who can't shoot.
Yeah, well, hopefully that'll change. Hopefully that'll change soon. Sammy, you were correct. My number 1 is Markelle Fultz. Had to stick another Philly guy in there. So just for so many reasons why this pick hurt so much. Partially is because the Celtics absolutely fleeced us because apparently Danny Ainge just knew that Markelle Fultz was going to be like the biggest bust of the century. And they were planning on taking Jason Tatum anyways at that pick. So they got what they wanted because I guess they knew that Jason Tatum was dropping down, but the dude couldn't even shoot free throws. Like he got the yips so bad. I couldn't even believe it. It looks like there's a middle schooler on the free throw line right now trying to shoot free throws. It was terrible. He was so bad.
Yeah. My number 1 is Darko Milicic, who wasn't as bad as maybe some of the other busts that were taken. I mean, he only averaged like 6 points in his NBA career, which is not good by any standard, but it's more the fact that he was taken number 2 overall by the Pistons behind LeBron in 2003 and in maybe one of the deepest classes of all time, and was taken before Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and several others. So Darko, that sucks, dude. That's just brutal.
I can't believe that. That was the one draft that like hardly anybody could mess up, and somehow the Pistons did.
Yeah, I was gonna say my number 1 is also Darko Milicic. I mean, if you just look at that top 5, it's literally LeBron James, Hall of Fame, the Darko Milicic, Carmelo Anthony, Hall of Fame, Chris Bosh. He might get some consideration, but injuries kind of screwed him over a little bit, and Dwayne Wade, Hall of Fame. And later in the draft also was a couple decent players who kind of got overlooked. Luke Walton wasn't a bad player. Kendrick Perkins ended up being a decent player. Nick Collison ended up doing some decent things. So a lot of players getting overlooked, but Darko Milicic, you kind of were just unlucky. And this one's also my number 1 because of a question that Austin Siebold from posed to me and Justin last year, trying to see if either of us had any idea who this guy was, who the biggest bust in the draft was, who that second pick for the Pistons was. And so I kind of already had this guy locked away in my mind because of that.
Yeah, I didn't even put him on my list. I did this list just straight from my own mind. Usually I need a little refresher on like what players I need to be having on this list. This one I was like, all right, I know this. Like I can put it on. I can't believe I forgot Darko. I can't believe I forgot. It just wasn't even on my radar because I had so many other players in mind. But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna put Sam Bowie, but I couldn't Sam shame. Couldn't do it. So I left him off.
It's tough. I get it. I'm in the same boat as you, Sammy.
But I think that's it for us. We look forward to a jam-packed week of some NBA news, and hopefully both the 76ers get worse and the Celtics get better. And, that'll do it for us here. The Speak of the Devils podcast. I'm Sam with Dom and Sam as well. And we'll see you next time. Roll Devs.
Roll Devs.